How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Why don't we get the recording of who you are and what's your business?
Well, my name is Bobbi Jo Matheson. I am a status entrepreneur. My roots come from Beaver First Nation up north, northern Alberta. I grew up in Grand Prairie, Alberta. I am a tattoo artist. I believe I'm going on 11 years, but it might be 12 now. I actually kind of fell into it. I wanted to be a lawyer, surprisingly. Nice. When I was younger, my entire childhood, I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I had a child really young, and it kind of just steered me in a different direction. So, yeah.
So a tattoo, now I know you do more than just tattooing, so tell me about that.
Tattooing, or what all the other things?
Yeah, tell me about the whole gamut of what Bobbi Jo is up to.
Okay, so I started tattooing kind of as a fluke, but just like many of my family members, a lot of us are artistic, inherently artistic, different mediums. Mine was painting and drawing from a young age. The thing about tattooing is people that get into tattooing, they kind of already know that they can do it. Somewhere deep inside, I don't know, I've spoken to a lot of tattoo artists, and for me it was the same way. My brother was having a tattoo party where a tattoo artist comes to the house and they do tattoos in a different room. This fella came to his house and started tattooing various people for money, kind of on the side or whatever, and this was long time ago. I was really impressed with this particular artist because the way he was set up, he was very sterile, very clean. He wouldn't allow, children, dogs, drinking. He wasn't drinking. It was kind of went against the norm of what the stereotypical, I guess, house tattoos were at the time. Anyways, my brother loves me and I'm a big brat, so I said, well, hey, let me try that. And so the tattoo artist gave me the machine, let me try it. He was really impressed with me and called me a natural, gave me my first machine and told me where to order supplies. And
wow. How old were you at this time?
Oh, 33? No, 31. 30 okay. Or 31.
So like yesterday?
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty late, actually. Pretty late to start the game for sure. But and so away I went. I started tattooing in my house. I did try to find an apprenticeship, just like everybody is supposed to, right? In the industry, you're supposed to find a traditional shop apprenticeship. I went to the shops in Grand Prairie, and unfortunately, just like many others, they're just very hard to find. Oftentimes, you need to know somebody in the shop. And so I couldn't, and with human nature the way it is, people are tenacious, and I didn't want to take no for an answer, just like anything else in my life. So I started tattooing on my own, and it was very, very difficult. It was hard because there wasn't the resources that are available now, such as YouTube and articles to read and other artists that are actually willing to help. So it was a tough go, and it was a long learning curve for me, but I learned and I did as much research as I possibly could, and I did it as responsibly as I could. I had a little basement tattoo shop set up. I was licensed, and I had a good following, and then it got really busy. The great thing about tattooing at home, unfortunately, there's always going to be a stigma. You could be great at home, but there's always going to be a stigma of being a house tattoo artist. Oh, you got that in somebody's basement, right? So other than the fact that it was great being able to tattoo in my pajamas and then just go upstairs and go to bed, I just kind of it grew beyond what I wanted it to be, and so it got to the point where I didn't even know the people that were getting referred to me, and it was kind of getting a little bit uncomfortable having people know where I live and all that kind of stuff. So then I decided that, hey, it was time to possibly move out of my home, and I was thinking about renting just a small office space. And I went looking for them in Grand Prairie at that time, the spaces that were suitable. So for Alberta Health, you need non-carpeted floors and you need a sink in the room. The ones that were suitable refused to rent to a tattoo artist because it was more of a corporate type building. And then the ones that weren't suitable, that would rent to me, I couldn't use them. So we came across the space that I'm in now, and I was like, oh goodness, what do I do? I mean, what do I go big or do I go home? And I'm like, well, I just came from home and I don't want to go back there. So I sat down with my family and I said, well, what do I do? What am I going to do? And so, yeah, Creative Inc. was born in 2015, and we've been going ever since. So we're starting our 8th year this April. In hindsight, that was the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life, because I didn't know at the time that that there was resources available to help me to start my business. I didn't know that you needed operating capital. I didn't know that I didn't know anything about being an entrepreneur, starting a business. I thought I did. Man, I was very naive. I started that business with a $12,000 bonus from my job that I was doing at the time. I was a territory manager for a large fuel retail company. So I ran that shop for the first 10 months, working 60 to 70 hours a week there, managing 13 retail stores, and then tattooing evenings and weekends. My family used to get angry with me because I would make them sit there with no customers day in, day out. But my experience, my previous retail experience in customer service taught me that consistency was one of the keys to gaining and gaining clientele or dealing with the public. Yeah. And so it paid off because people started knowing where we were and trusting us, and we slowly built our clientele. My second artist came, Ryan, and he's been with me since then, and he's still with us. He's our top dog in our shop now. And then I started having vision and migraine problems about 4 years ago, and that was kind of devastating for me because at that time my ego kind of took a kick to the teeth because I realized that I was never going to be an international tattoo artist. And so that was kind of an identity crisis for me, because I now then realized that I was gonna have to make some decisions about what my future was going to be, but I wanted to stay in the industry. So I figured, okay, well, what can I do to stay in the industry? So I then started, I just spent some time, reflecting on life and stuff, and then I realized that, then I started thinking about how hard it was when I started learning on my own, and then I started looking at what other countries were doing, and how the industry was trending towards with the whole resurgence of tattoos and the revitalization and the whole acceptance in the industry with workplaces. The U.S. Army now allows tattoos. You can't get discriminated with for tattoos and piercings, so this huge boom in the industry. And then I decided that, you know what, I would put my skill and my experience to good use, and I saw an opportunity for business as well, and that's how the tattoo school was born.
That's amazing. I mean, a tattoo school is not a light subject, and if I'm not mistaken, it's probably one of the first in Canada.
It is actually. It's the so there are other training programs in Canada, primarily on the West Coast. However, those ones are, for lack of a better term, I guess like a crash course, because they're only about 3 to 5 days long. Mine is a 6-month certificate course, and it to get licensed by the province through advanced education is they told me is about 8 weeks. It took me almost 2 years to do it, because the statistics that were required and the information that was required in order to fill out the application form did not exist in Canada for tattooing and piercing, because we don't track it. So we're a little bit behind, the United States or the rest of the world in terms of how we view and how we track that kind of stuff. So I had to actually use U.S. statistics to fill out the application. They did kind of make a few exceptions for me to be able to do this. And so, yeah, we became licensed in 2019, and we were the first. We are still the first and only post-secondary tattoo training program in Canada.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that most people would probably you know, you get into tattooing and you're like, you know, what's the least path to, or the least resistance path to do well and to make some money and make some things happen. And yet you almost went the other way. I mean, from the beginning, you said, even from your home shop, you kept things clean, you tried to follow regulations, you made sure you were licensed, and then you pushed the government to build regulatory systems around this and actually create the first tattoo school in Canada. I mean, this is fantastic. What drove you to do it properly?
I've always found that, I guess it all kind of boils down to integrity and wanting to be a role model for my son. You know, the whole definition of integrity is doing the right thing even when someone's not looking. And I'm very much a rule follower, kind of a black and white person, like when it comes to doing the right thing. And I've found early on in my life that if you do the right thing, then you don't have to spend any time looking over your shoulder for someone to come at you. And especially in this industry, and especially with the tattoo school, I've faced a lot of negativity from the industry itself in terms of tattoo artists that have the old school mindset that are against tattoo schools. So the industry itself is not in favor of, and they're not supportive of tattoo schools. They would prefer that all tattoo artists that get into the industry would go the shop apprenticeship route. The problem with that is that those are becoming increasingly unrealistic in today's economy. You can't devote endless hours of free time when you're trying to support yourself, let alone a family. Oftentimes those were in uncomfortable environments. You can't treat people like that anymore. Right. And again, like I mentioned earlier, if you don't know anybody in the shop, the chances are slim to none that you're even going to get the apprenticeship. Sure. So that leaves the only option to learn at home on your own, which, you know, if someone's doing something wrong, it's not because they're purposely trying to be negligent or they don't care. It's because the resources weren't available for them to learn any other way. Right. And so that becomes dangerous to the public. And so I'm just trying to help aspiring tattoo artists because I remember how hard it was. And then it wasn't a great journey. And now I can help them, you know, not injure people, not spread disease, and use the tools that are available to tattoo artists in the proper way.
I love that. Well, let's look at that. So I'm sure it's all been sunshine and roses and rainbows the whole time?
No.
Okay,
No.
tell me about the journey. Tell me about some of the uglier times, maybe.
Yeah. So like I said, when I first started the tattoo shop, I hadn't anticipated how difficult it was going to be to start up the shop in the first place with little capital and little planning, poor planning. I had no idea that there was resources available such as Community Futures or you know, any of the indigenous organizations that are out there. Any of that. I didn't know any until later on. Business networking, I wish I would have known about that. Nobody understands an entrepreneur or a small business or business owner like another business owner. And sure. You can talk until you're blue in the face to your friends, families, loved ones, but they kind of glaze over a little bit after a while because they absolutely cannot comprehend the weight on your shoulders, the fact that you don't leave it at work. It's in there all the time. And that weight is, it's so heavy sometimes, and sometimes, you know, I guess that's what I would have told my younger self if I would have known about it, is to reach out to groups like that, because then you can even just vent. You can vent. You can get business tips. You can talk about problems that you're having at that time. They can give you solutions or experiences that they've went through and how they handled it. And having the variety of different businesses too. Sometimes you can have an accountant in your group, or you can have a legal professional, or whatever, marketing professionals, like the group that I'm in now. I mean, it's invaluable information. But some days, you know, you just you don't realize that when you get into business, it's discouraging sometimes, because nobody shares that burden but you at the end of the day, and nobody, you know, it's
You're the only one responsible.
Absolutely, you're the only one responsible, and some days it's, you know, like I said, some days you want to burn down the building, but you can't. You can't, because you're probably in there working still.
Right. It's true.
Yeah.
So in those moments, I mean, one is obviously going and talking to people, but tell me a little bit about how you wrestle with that psychologically on your own time. Like you've got this weight on your shoulders, and I agree. I mean, I've been there and understand that, and dealt with massive loads of debt, and, you know, investors and pains in the rear end that you're working with or whatever. But tell me a little bit more about your psychology. How do you handle that when it's going on, and how do you talk your way out of it? What do you do to kind of encourage and inspire yourself? That kind of thing.
For me, I feel like it's best to stay busy. Stay busy. Stay busy, but then also know when to walk away for the day, if that makes sense. So like devote, you know, a certain amount of time during the day to that, but then know that there has to be an end time in the day.
Sure.
Because if
say enough
for today, enough worrying for today, and then just leave it there, because it's still going to be there tomorrow. But you know, everybody talks about a work-life balance, but it's really difficult for an entrepreneur to be able to do that. But it's incredibly important that you try to have some kind of balance like that, and some
like a
kind
segregation
of
between life and business.
Absolutely. You need to be able to shut it off, and if you don't shut it off and devote some kind of time to, you know, home life, and then but it's hard. It's one of the hardest things that you'll ever have to do, I believe, for me anyways, is to be able to walk away from that, because it's this nagging thing that you got to deal with that, but it's still going to be there. It's still going to be there tomorrow. And you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family, you owe it to your health, you owe it to everything after that, whatever time that is, 6, 7, 8, whatever. You still owe other parts of your life some devotion to. So once I started learning that, because I was doing, you know, 18-hour days too, and it can make you sick. So I think that and just staying positive, taking bite-sized pieces. It's never a bad idea to look at the whole picture, but then stepping back from that whole picture and then managing it in bite-sized pieces. You know, that whole picture is like the goal, or the I guess the larger scene, I guess, but you still got to take the roadblocks away, if that makes sense. Work on one roadblock at a time to get the bigger picture. I guess it's a puzzle. I would imagine it's a puzzle. Yeah,
I often refer to it as the telescope and the microscope.
Yes.
The telescope is the big picture that you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
But if you only stay focused on the telescope, you trip over your feet.
Yeah.
And if you only focus on the microscope right in front of you, you miss the big picture.
Yeah.
And so being able to kind of balance those, move back and forth into those two realms.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, I mean, where do you see this going? Where are you evolving now, and where are you trying to get to by the time you're quote unquote done?
I don't know if I'm ever going to be done. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I mean, I started our third company. It's called Creative Edge. It's a piercing department. We took the piercing services in our tattoo shop and created a whole standalone business. I'd like to see that grow. I don't know. I don't think that I'll ever be done. My next goal, I guess, would be I would like to see some type of training in every province, whether that be, you know, vetting tattoo artists to carry out my content, you know, facilitate my content, whether that be like distance learning. I'm not quite sure yet. I haven't decided. Right now, though, I did put the brakes on new projects and kind of just focusing on what we're doing right now. But we're in the process of updating our website to be a little bit more user friendly. But other than that, I mean, like I'm working on our piercing program to get that licensed.
Nice.
So I actually,
Great.
no, I just lied. I'm not actually, I didn't put the brakes on anything. I meant like large projects, but I always have something on the go, so.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, that's, you're a single mom, right? And you're indigenous.
Yep.
And how would you create excitement for those coming up in this space? Maybe with a similar background, maybe not, but just to inspire people to get into entrepreneurship, to be entrepreneurs, that they can do it. How would you help, especially given your background, like who you are now?
You know, I think that there's a lot of fear associated with when people, and this is coming from just talking to, you know, Indigenous people in my circles and my own family and my own friends and stuff, and I feel like they think that it's a lot more work than it actually is, right? And granted, it is a lot of work to anybody can start a business. This is what I feel like. This is my own opinion, but I feel like anybody can start a business. The work is, and the headache and the struggle and the is keeping it going, right? So you can start a business, but it's the real challenge is keeping it going. I was very fortunate to have a really strong support system. So I have my mom, I have my daughter-in-law, I have my son, I have various cousins that like to come and go, you know, whenever they want or whatever. But like have had a very strong support system. I wouldn't be here without that. But the really cool thing about being an entrepreneur is, you know, it's the freedom to be able to, you know, see something, your vision. It's like it's like a child. It's like, those are my babies, and to see it grow and evolve and be something that you're proud of, and you can see it helping other people, or people talking about it, or they say, hey, I know you from that place, or hey, you're from that place, or you see, or in passing, and you hear your business name, or you see it somewhere else, and that's that instills a lot of pride. It really does. And there's a lot to be excited about owning a business. There's a lot of headaches that come with it as well, but I mean, there's the feeling of accomplishment that I feel seeing my business grow, and people enjoying what we're doing for them, and people getting something from it. It's a great satisfaction from it.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, being Indigenous, has that caused challenges for you along the way? Like, actually, I'm more probably interested in the mindset more than anything. Some of the Indigenous folks that I've worked with in the past, they often have talked a lot about even their own suppressive tendencies to getting out there and trying something different. How would you talk about that?
Well, when I first started this business, so I named it Creative, so CREE, 8IV, and you know, I was a little bit nervous about naming it such an Indigenous name, and because I had faced so much negativity growing up. Me and my brother were bullied when we were younger, and I was kind of nervous about it, that it was going to fail primarily because of racism, right? And then I decided, like, you know what, I can't help that. I can't help that if somebody doesn't want to come to my business because of the business name, and really, do I want those people anyway?
Great point.
Right?
Love that.
Yeah. And so, and then I thought, well, you know what, then I was nervous about the business community itself. And you know, the being in those business networking situations, and having to deal with like people like the Chamber of Commerce, and you know, all of those different organizations that were out there in the business community. And I'm like, well, are they going to accept me? Because I'm not even just the fact that I was a tattoo shop, but because I was an Indigenous, and I was a female, and I was this and that. And you know what, surprisingly, people don't care. They don't care that you're Indigenous, and that's what I've found is really the public and business organizations, they just care that whether or not you're operating your business properly, that you're operating it with integrity, that you're offering a quality service, that you're following the rules, really the rules in terms of like treating people properly, and you're doing, you know, you're offering a quality product or service, and that you're not being bad to people, I guess, if that makes sense. And they don't care that you're Indigenous.
I love that.
And I was really surprised and so relieved to find out that nobody cared that. And actually, I've actually gotten so much positive feedback because I've heard like, man, that's a really neat name. I like how you spelt that. Or I came here specifically because it was an Indigenous company. And when I was driving by, I saw that. You know what I mean? So it's nice to see that that we were an inspiration. Excuse me, being such a public Indigenous company.
So fantastic.
Yeah.
Honestly, I could probably talk with you about this forever. This is fantastic. I love the story. I love the background. I love the lessons you learned. I know you to be very strong on the finances, which is something you didn't start with.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that. We'll pick this up another time. So how might people get a hold of you?
Well, I have Instagram. We have 3 Facebook pages, and then we have a website. So creative.ca.
Spell that out again for me.
CREE, the number 8 IV.
IV.
Yeah, okay. .ca. And then, so there's contact forms on the website, and then I think I'm not quite sure who that goes to. I think that goes to Jessica. But my email address is bobbijo@creative.ca. So anybody can email me at any time.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you. I mean, I'm so encouraged and so grateful that you drove all the way from Grand Prairie to come and see us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. It's really exciting to showcase what you're doing and working on, and I'm excited about getting you involved in our community wherever we can.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that you brought me here, and I'm glad to help. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Thanks.